Hello and a very good afternoon to all our viewers who are joining me live in this Facebook and YouTube interaction of News 9. And today I will be speaking about how Zydus Kavach scored last in the sensitivity study which was conducted by a private institution. So before we get to that, let me give you a backdrop of why the Kavach was used. So far Assam, Delhi, Kerala and Pune have conducted sero survey in their regions, and to conduct this exercise they used three types of kits which were approved by the ICMR. So in July and August, the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, Mumbai, Ahmedabad and Pune released some of the results of their respective city-wide seroprevalence assays, which they had conducted together with different research institutes. And the seroprevalence surveys are useful to understand the extent to which a given population has contracted a specific infectious disease, and these surveys use tests that detect the presence of antibodies which the body's immune system would have produced to fight the pathogen, and in this case, in the current scenario, it is the SARS-CoV-2 virus or COVID-19. So these tests are basically conducted in order to check if an individual is protected from COVID-19 or not. So as on August 7th, 2020, ICMR approved 12 IgG test kits that could be used for seroprevalence surveys, and one of them is the Kavach IgG ELISA kit, which ICMR developed in May and licensed it to Zydus Kavach in Ahmedabad. So anecdotal reports have now suggested that it's one of the most commonly used kits in the surveys and conducted so far, and this kit is used widely during sero survey exercise as well. So with the help of these kits, sero survey results indicate the measures which the policymakers will have to enforce in order to bring the national COVID-19 pandemic under control. So the Department of Biotechnology India Consortium for COVID-19 Research recently did a comparison with these three kits, and the kits that they used were RBD ELISA developed by Haryana-based THSTI, and the second one was Diasorin Lysin SARS-CoV-2 IgG CLIA, made in Italy, and it meets the UK Medicines and Healthcare Products regulatory agencies criteria. So it is also emergency use approval from the US Food and Drug Administration. Well, the third kit that was used for sero surveys in India was Zydus Kavach ELISA, which the ICMR developed in May and then licensed it to Zydus Kavach. So when the ICMR announced that it had built an antibody testing kit, its press release claimed that a specificity and the sensitivity of 100% and 98.7% respectively. So the kits makers at ICMR and the National Institute of Virology in Pune admitted that the kit was 97.9% specific and 92.37% sensitive. So in the current study, the researchers found that the kit was 99.5% specific and only 75.7% sensitive. The Zydus Kavach reported a sensitivity of 92.3% in their press release, whereas the RBD ELISA was found to be 84.7% sensitive. The Diasorin kit, which the maker had claimed, was 97.4% sensitive and was found to be just 82% sensitive. So the RBD ELISA and Diasorin CLIA assays attempt to detect the presence of the virus's spike in protein in a given sample. So the RBD ELISA assay can detect antibodies against the receptor binding domain, the part of the spike protein that binds to the ACE2 receptors in our body. So the Diasorin assay detects antibodies against S1 and S2 regions of the spike protein. So there are no details in the public domain about which viral proteins the Zydus Kavach assay looks for. And now, in order to answer a few questions which are surrounding this particular study, we have with us Dr. Sitesh Roy, one of the most prominent pulmonologists from Mumbai. Many thanks for joining me in this live interaction, Dr. Sitesh. So my first question is, how important are these kits for a sero survey, and also what roles do they play?
So Deepak, these sero survey kits are extremely important because that's the way that we do population studies to find out what percentage of the population has been exposed to the SARS-CoV-2 virus and developed IgG antibodies, which are the long-term antibodies against the virus, whether it is through an asymptomatic exposure that they may not even know they have had, or through a mild, moderate, or severe infection. And by knowing that data of how many people have been actually exposed, we cannot say from a positive antibody test that necessarily that person is immune to COVID-19, because we have to realize there are a variety of different antibodies that are involved in keeping an infection at bay. But we know that that person has been exposed to the virus and has a chance of having a good immune response and hence stay protected if they were to encounter the virus again. So these kits are extremely important, and they are being used, or kits like this are being used around the world to identify what percentage of the population is already immune or has antibodies to COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. Just to give you an idea of numbers, in New York City, the number ranges between 12 to 15%. After they had their huge outbreak back in the month of May and June. The numbers in a place like Dharavi in Mumbai, a slum, has been given a number of up to 57% that were people who were tested randomly for the SARS-CoV-2 antibody were found to be positive. So there's a wide range of people depending on where the pockets were and how widely the infection would have spread in that region.
Okay. So also, doctor, now when we were coming across, this particular study, we came across two terminologies. One is sensitivity and the other one is specificity. So what do these two terminologies mean with respect to these kits?
Sure. So specificity is where, we have had old coronaviruses around us since the last 60 years. Now, those coronaviruses will also have some protein sequences that may be still preserved in the new SARS-CoV-2 virus because of what we call genetic changes that occur over time in a certain family. If a test that we do, if an antibody is developed against one of the old coronaviruses, and the test happens to pick that up as a positive result, then that would reduce the specificity of that test, which means it is not specific to picking up only SARS-CoV-2. It can also pick up the old SARS or the old coronaviruses, HKU, NL63. There are many of them, and that would make the test less useful. So specificity being very high is very important in this test, because you don't want to pick up antibodies to an old coronavirus and confuse yourself thinking that the population is immune to COVID-19. So specificity in the range of above 95-98% is really what we look for most tests that are really valuable and useful. When we talk of sensitivity, we are talking about how many cases can the test actually pick up. So if someone has had a COVID-19 infection, whether asymptomatic or symptomatic does not matter, and they have made antibodies to the spike protein, to the receptor binding domain proteins, to whichever other proteins that kit or test is testing antibodies for, and the test is able to pick those up accurately. So that would be called what would be in a medical terminology or in a general term called a false positive or a false negative. The false positives are the specificity that is weaker if it is there. False negatives, which means someone has antibodies but the test was unable to detect it. So when we say 75% sensitivity, it means there are 25% people who had the antibody to COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 in their blood, but the test was unable to detect it or pick it up. So that's what sensitivity means in simple terms.
So now, doctor, in this particular study, the Zydus Kavach, which was, authorized by the ICMR and was then licensed to Zydus Cadila, has now, turned out to be very inaccurate, or it has come out to be the last one in the lot. So will the results obtained from the survey with the help of these kits be of any importance?
They will still be of importance, Deepak, and the reason I'll explain to you. Let's take the gold standard test right now, the RT-PCR. It has a sensitivity of 70% or 68%.
Okay.
We are still using it, and we are using it as a primary confirmation of diagnosis.
Right.
Okay, so 75 is above 68 or 70. That aside, what this would tell us is in case the sero survey in Mumbai came up with a number of, let's say, 10%, then the actual sero survey result should have been somewhere in the range of probably 15 or 18%. So all we know is that if we have used the COVID Kavach, and if this study is valid, you have to remember that every study has a bias to it.
Okay.
Who is doing it, where is it being done, and how is it being done? So if you take the same study from ICMR, they may get better results because it's their own test and they do it in a different way versus some other organization or company doing it. I'm not trying to point fingers, but anyone who does research, including myself, knows there's a bias of who is conducting the test. And if the group or the organization that did the comparison of the three tests has anything to do with any of the three manufacturers or supply chain, then the test is considered to be biased. I'm not making any judgments. People can do their own research and find out the facts. Having said that, all I can tell you is if the 75% number of sensitivity is accurate for the COVID Kavach, it means that we have underestimated by a fraction of maybe 8 or 10% or maybe 15% the number of people who probably have antibodies to SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 but have not been detected. So our sero surveys would have higher numbers than they currently have whenever they are appropriately released and known.
Okay, right, doctor. Thank you for joining me with all those details. Well, that was Dr. Sitesh Roy giving his opinion as to why the Zydus Kavach, which is used to conduct the sero survey, is turning out to be the last one in the race because of its inaccurate details which are presented in the press release. And now the Kavach has been exposed by a particular study, and the ICMR is yet to react on this particular revelation. So whether they would react and whether they would rectify this particular error or come out with another testing kit remains to be seen. And with that, it's a wrap on this live interaction. Until next time, stay safe and also take care. Thank you for watching.